Day 61, on extreme actions. You don't get extreme talent, fame, or success without extreme actions. It's important to approach your goals in a sustainable way, thinking in terms of months, years, or decades instead of mere days or weeks. However, at the same time, taking extreme actions can pay handsome dividends, too. Balancing between the extreme and more sustainable approach is a difficult art, but in essence it comes down to taking extreme actions during a relatively brief period of time, while ensuring that your actions are sustainable over the long term. For example, when my first book became a bestseller, I stuck to a strict publication schedule to benefit from the gained momentum. I launched my second book, on which I had been working since I finished the first draft of my first book, a mere 3 weeks later. My third book went live in another 2 weeks, and my fourth was released 3 weeks after the previous one. From there, I slowed down my pace, but I still managed to release at least 4 new books each year. In the short term, my actions were extreme. And precisely because of that, I was able to build a large following quickly. However, after an initial sprint, you need to slow down to go the distance, and that's when I transitioned to a little less extreme approach, but one still exhibited by few authors. Are you taking extreme actions to gain momentum and separate yourself from the ones who don't have the self-discipline needed to push themselves hard? For a short period of time. How can you intensify your efforts for a couple of weeks or months to maximize your results before transitioning to a more sustainable and less extreme approach? Day 62, on moonshot projects. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. As we've already discussed several times, living your life the hard way makes it paradoxically easier, while avoiding the hard things makes your life more difficult. When it comes to accomplishing your goals, the hard truth is that easy accomplishments often go away quickly, while larger projects produce more lasting results. For one, setting close to impossible goals requires you to think in categories producing pivotal differences, and not mere tweaks. For example, losing 5 pounds, or 2 kilos, requires a small tweak. You can eat less for 2 weeks and you'll accomplish your goal. However, you won't fix the underlying issue of being overweight, and probably soon regain the weight. How about losing 50 pounds, or 20 kilos, this year? You can no longer afford to think in terms of small tweaks. You need a permanent change, a change in your habits and identity that will address the cause of the problem and lead to a permanent solution. Audacious goals can also transform your life, while reaching safe, easy objectives won't change much in the grand scheme of things. If you want to save $1 million for retirement, you'll need a different strategy than if you only want to save enough for a rainy day fund. A moonshot project of building a $1 million nest egg might lead you to building a business that will not only generate $1 million for retirement, but also help you retire early, a pleasant side effect you initially didn't anticipate at all. As an additional benefit, big goals are more motivating, which means you'll be less likely to give up when you encounter obstacles. Granted, you need to pursue the hard things in a smart way so that you won't find yourself walking with your head in the clouds. Set an audacious goal, but accompany it with a realistic deadline. An ambitious goal is still a big accomplishment, even if it takes you years to achieve it. Day 63, on the will being stronger than the skill. Champions aren't made in gyms, champions are made from something they have deep inside them, a desire, a dream, a vision. They have to have last-minute stamina, they have to be a little faster, they have to have the skill and the will. But the will must be stronger than the skill. When you switch your focus from instant gratification toward long-term accomplishment, create a mental image of why you should reject the instant rewards and keep going, despite hardships, failures, sacrifices, and lack of compensation. A detailed vision of your wished-for future will fuel your resolve, compensating for any weaknesses you might have or difficulties that might stand on your way toward success. For example, I struggled with extreme shyness as a teenager. I set a goal to develop self-confidence and feel relaxed in all kinds of social settings. I was, and still am, an introverted lone wolf who needs solitude more than I need other people. However, my will was strong. I knew I needed to make this change in order to stop limiting my personal growth, something I found and still find is one of my most important values. This deep desire kept me going, despite my personality being extremely unsuited to social settings. Note that your deep desire doesn't have to be about you. You've surely heard stories about people performing incredible feats of strength to rescue a victim of an accident. For example, in 2013 in Oregon, teenage sisters Hannah, age 16, and Haley, age 14, lifted a 3,000-pound, 1,360 kilograms, tractor to save their father, who was pinned underneath it. The mechanism that supports such impossible actions still baffles scientists. We only know one thing for sure: under normal circumstances, Hannah and Haley wouldn't be able to lift a tractor. It was their will, their immense desire to save their father, that gave them superhuman strength. If you're struggling with a certain goal, think who could benefit from you achieving it. How could you improve somebody's life, or perhaps even save a life, thanks to persevering and accomplishing your objective? Week 10. Day 64, on seeing obstacles as hurdles. If we choose to see the obstacles in our path as barriers, we stop trying. If we choose to see the obstacles as hurdles, we can leap over them. Successful people don't have fewer problems. They have determined that nothing will stop them from going forward. One might argue that it's mere semantics: barriers or hurdles, both make it difficult to reach success. However, thinking of a problem as a hurdle means approaching it as something that you can possibly walk around or leap over, but a barrier sounds like something that is impermeable and a fixed limitation. Nobody likes to face obstacles, but it's thanks to the obstacles you face today that you gain the ability to overcome other hardships in the future, ones that would possibly crush you if it weren't for the experience you're having today. Problem-solving skills are exactly that, skills. The more often you encounter problems and resolve them, the better you'll get at dealing with them. For this reason, as a great exercise for building self-discipline and mental resilience, I strongly suggest exposing yourself to difficult tasks. Embrace problems in your life and look at dealing with difficulties as training yourself to see problems as hurdles instead of barriers. Exert willpower to deal with the hard problems, instead of looking for the easiest way out. Consider several ways to tackle the issue and try to visualize how each solution can help you leap over the hurdle. You don't necessarily have to throw problems at yourself from every direction. You can also practice by helping your friends solve their problems or by imagining you're facing the problems you're reading about in a book or seeing in a TV show. Just for practice, imagine that you were about to launch your business when a key investor backed out, leaving you $20,000 short of the budget necessary to produce the first line of your product. To make matters worse, you've already accepted payments from your first clients and need to deliver within 2 months. Most people would consider it an impermeable barrier. Game over, say goodbye to your dreams. You, as a mentally resilient and self-disciplined person, will look at it as a hurdle. What can you do to leap over it and keep going, despite such a difficulty being thrown in your way? Day 65, on self-discipline with money. Try to save something while your salary is small. It's impossible to save after you begin to earn more. Whenever the topic of winning the lottery comes up in a conversation, I always say that what so many people consider the biggest blessing in their entire lives is actually the biggest curse for most people. Let me explain why, but first, some curious facts. The numbers are terrifying. According to 2015 research from the Pew Charitable Trusts, 41% of respondents don't have enough liquid savings to cover an unexpected $2,000 cost, such as a medical emergency, and a typical household can't replace even 1 month of income with liquid savings. It's important to note we aren't talking about people living in poverty, the same respondents are the ones buying new homes, cars, TVs, smartphones, and other gadgets. The reason for their lack of savings isn't lack of income, it's lack of self-discipline. While a small percentage of respondents probably do exercise some kind of financial self-control, a great majority doesn't. What do you think? How likely would they be to exercise self-discipline with money upon winning the lottery if they can't manage their finances now? Even if they won millions of dollars, later on they would be in the same spot as they are today, if not in an even worse situation. That's why winning the lottery, the dream of so many, can actually be the biggest curse. For this reason, no matter how well off you are today, it's of crucial importance to start saving your money now if you aren't doing so already. It doesn't matter if you're saving $10 or $10,000 a month, it's the habit that counts. When your financial situation improves, and as a person interested in building self-discipline, it most likely will, it will ensure that you continue exerting self-control with money. If you're lacking such a habit today, don't fool yourself into thinking you'll control your finances when you start making more. Build healthy financial habits when you have little disposable income, and saving money will be easier when you'll have more money to save. And if you do win the lottery, you'll thank me for encouraging you to instill financial discipline today. Day 66, on pointless complaints. But my nose is running. What do you have hands for, idiot, if not to wipe it? But how is it right that there be running noses in the first place? Instead of thinking up protests, wouldn't it be easier just to wipe your nose? Grumbling about everything is a favorite pastime of countless individuals, all over the world. It's incredible how much time and energy people waste on something as pointless as complaining, particularly when they can do nothing about their source of protests. It takes self-discipline to stop complaining, and a great deal of it if you're like most people, who can't go even one day without voicing their dissatisfaction with the world. Consequently, managing your complaints is a great exercise to improve your self-control. Starting today, try to go without complaining for as long as you can. Whenever you catch yourself complaining, turn it into a solution, try to find something good about whatever dissatisfies you, or let it go if the solution is beyond your control or the problem isn't worth your energy. For example, if you're at a restaurant and your meal isn't as warm as you'd like it to be, you can ask the waiter to heat it, turning a complaint into a solution. Consider it an exercise in voluntary discomfort, finding something good about the source of the complaint, or simply eat it, having decided that complaining about it isn't worth your energy. Such mental training will not only improve your impulse self-control, but also make you a more positive person. In contrast, what do you get out of complaining besides ruining your mood? Day 67, on borrowing money. Every time you borrow money, you're robbing your future self. Borrowing money for consumption is a widespread disease in today's world, fueled by excess and materialism. Unlike taking on a business loan to achieve a return on investment that is higher than the interest rate, a practice that, when done wisely, can enrich your future self, consumer loans only serve to satisfy the desire for instant gratification, while robbing, sometimes spectacularly, your future self. Each time you're thinking about getting a loan to satisfy a desire to own an item that belongs in the want category, imagine that you have the power to stop your past self from getting all the consumer loans you have today. If you don't have any, pretend that you do. Just like that, you can erase all of them and finally gain peace of mind. Would you still go into debt to finance your toys? 5 years from now, you'll look back at your past self, puzzled at how short-sighted you were to gift yourself with such a bad future for the fleeting gratification of getting a new car or TV. But I can get such great terms, it's almost a free loan, you're saying. The terms don't matter. The habit of prioritizing your present self over your future self eventually affects not only your finances, but every other area of your life. Developing discipline to do without unnecessary feel-good purchases you can't afford is one of the most important things you can do to gain more self-control and ensure that your future is better than the present. Day 68, on choosing the right motivator. For me, success was always going to be a Lamborghini. But now I've got it, it just sits on my drive. External rewards like a Lamborghini are poor motivators. For one, I've heard countless times about people willing to endure immense torture to stay true to their values or save their loved ones, but I've yet to hear a story of a person willing to die for their new Lexus. Second, materialistic rewards give fleeting happiness and often come with more problems than benefits. Just ask any owner of a Lamborghini how much fun it is to see people constantly taking pictures of their car, how fun it is to spend thousands of dollars for a simple checkup, or how stressed out they are in the parking lot, afraid of an envious driver of a beat-up car dinging their shiny vehicle. Last but most definitely not least, a powerful motivator should feel like a necessity, a thing you can't live without, and not a mere toy that displays your high status, which ultimately nobody cares about. If you're struggling to stick to your resolution, perhaps the only motivation you have is the extrinsic type, driven by money, fame, or prizes. This type of motivation isn't bad per se, what's bad is when it's the only thing that keeps you going. Whenever you're setting new goals, go beyond mere external rewards. Instead, support your self-discipline with intrinsic motivators, internal rewards, such as doing something out of a need to grow as a person, achieve more independence, realize your full potential, enjoy yourself, learn, or explore. Combine this motivation with a need to make the world a better place, and you'll have a powerful source of inspiration that will enable you to grin and bear the difficulties that you'll undoubtedly encounter along the way. Day 69, on climbing steep hills. To climb steep hills requires slow pace at first. If you think of your goal as a steep hill, imagine how ridiculous it would be to stop midway just because you're slowly scrambling up instead of sprinting all the way to the top. That's precisely what many people do when they start working on a new goal and realize that the journey will take longer than they expected. What difference does it make that reaching a goal takes you longer than you planned? If you want to climb a steep hill, will you stop climbing it because you can't climb it in 2 hours, but can in 3? Will you retreat to the bottom of the hill and forever stare at its peak, frustrated by the dissatisfying pace of the climb? Another mistake is the assumption that if something is slow in the beginning, it will stay that way. When I started my career as a self-published author, I tried several different genres. Things were going slow at the beginning because I needed to figure out which genre and style fitted me best. Once I established the proper direction, I released my first bestseller, then the second, and soon there was a snowball effect. How wise would it have been to give up during the first several months, frustrated by the slow pace? Day 70, on Parkinson's Law. It is a commonplace observation that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Limiting the time available to complete a given task is one of the most powerful secrets of productive people and a powerful way to overcome procrastination. If you lack the self-control needed to work in a focused way, give yourself a challenging deadline to enforce concentration. Suddenly, what normally takes 2 hours to accomplish, or rather, 2 hours of intermittent work and distractions, will only take 30 minutes, or less, of 100% focused work at your highest potential. At the moment I'm writing these words, I have a goal to write 4 entries in 50 minutes. Because of my self-imposed time pressure, I'm 100% focused on the task at hand. I can't distract or second-guess myself, 2 things that interrupt the creative process and slow down my writing pace. Since I have given myself little time to get the task done, procrastination is a non-issue. I can't afford to dilly-dally because I'll miss my deadline. To further motivate myself to work quickly, I established a reward for performing the task on time, reading the new autobiography of Richard Branson, one of my business idols. This simple trick can become one of your most powerful allies toward increasing your productivity. If you've been putting off a certain unpleasant task, get to it now, but instead of giving yourself plenty of time to finish it, do it in 25% of your usual time frame. The new, greatly shortened period of work should reduce your resistance to getting started, and the challenge of doing it more quickly should bring out some excitement that will additionally fuel your resolve to get it done. Week 11. Day 71, on taking a step forward. If you don't ask, the answer's always no. If you don't step forward, you're always in the same place. When I was battling against my shyness, I set a goal to approach attractive women in the street. I knew that if I did it several dozen times, I would most likely overcome my social fears and transform into a new person. What helped me act, in spite of immense anxiety, was the realization that talking myself out of approaching a woman would certainly equate to a no. Approaching her and getting rejected couldn't worsen my situation. In fact, I could only gain, because even a rejection was still a valuable lesson I wouldn't learn if I chose inaction. Likewise, many people hesitate to start working on their goals out of a fear of failure or self-doubt. They fail to realize that if they don't take a step forward, they'll be in the same place. Even if they take an unsuccessful step forward and need to backtrack, they'd still gain some experience. There's nothing to lose, and potentially a lot to gain. Are there any goals you'd like to pursue, but are afraid that you'll embarrass yourself or fail? Have you ever considered that not acting on them leads to surefire failure, while an attempt gives you at least a small chance of success and a 100% chance of learning something new? Day 72, on the value of the struggle. To have striven, to have made the effort, to have been true to certain ideals, this alone is worth the struggle. We fantasize about the day we receive a trophy, cash out, step on the scales and see the perfect weight, travel to this beautiful place, step into this new spacious house, or marry that beautiful girl or guy. The focus is on the success, not the struggle. And it's understandable, success is glamorous, memorable, and marketable, while the struggle is drab, disagreeable, and unattractive for the general public. Yet, it's making the effort, struggling, and sticking to your resolutions that shapes you as a person. Success is a reward for having given it your best, but it's not always within your control whether and when you get to enjoy it. Whenever you find yourself discouraged by your lack of success, remind yourself that the process alone is your reward. It's in your hands whether you allow yourself to see the rewards the struggle generates or ignore them, mindlessly pursing the end result as the sole indicator of success. I failed numerous times in business. I could have despaired that I had lost so much time and money, but I hadn't really failed. I had been true to my values of pursuing the entrepreneurial life. I kept going, despite the obstacles I constantly encountered along the way. Over and over again, I beat entrepreneurial depression and found it in myself yet again to get back up and try again. Eventually my efforts paid off, but even if it had taken longer to get the results, or if I had died before reaching them, the struggle would still have been worth it for the immense changes I underwent on the journey to pursue my dreams. Day 73, on having fun. Fun is at the core of the way I like to do business, and it has been key to everything I've done from the outset. More than any other element, fun is the secret of virgin success. I am aware that the idea of business as being fun and creative goes right against the grain of convention, and it's certainly not how they teach it at some of those business schools, where business means hard grind and lots of discounted cash flows and net present values. Building self-discipline and working on your long-term goals doesn't have to be a chore. In fact, if it is, you'll have a hard time reaching success because if something bores you to tears or doesn't produce much excitement, it's difficult to stick to it in the long term. Probably the most common area in which I see most people struggling because of lack of fun is exercise. If you succumb to the popular notion that exercise has to be repetitive, painful, and boring, guess what? A few weeks from now, you'll be back in front of your TV, wondering what motivated you to do such a stupid thing as attending those torturous fitness classes. The only way to develop a permanent habit of regular physical activity is to find an exercise you enjoy. Without the fun factor, exercise will always feel like a chore, and you probably already have enough obligations in your life. The same applies to virtually any other endeavor. I treat my business seriously, but at the same time I'm trying to make it a bit more fun, either by throwing in a joke here and there while writing a book, coming up with a fun writing challenge, or testing new exciting ideas. Do you consider working on your goals enjoyable and fun, or is it mostly a chore? If it's the latter, time to grab a notepad and make a list of things you can do to introduce more fun and excitement. Day 74, on acting less and thinking more. Act less, think more. Reflect on what really matters to you. Stop doing anything that isn't valuable, that doesn't make you happy. Savor life. This advice goes against the grain, as self-help authors usually suggest to behave the other way around, think less, and act more. The danger in acting more than thinking is that eventually you'll find yourself working on goals you don't really care that much about, or doing things in a less than optimal way. For example, when I was working on my fitness goals, I acted a lot. I religiously followed my workout schedule and did everything I could to build a strong body, including eating foods recommended for bodybuilders, recording videos of my lifts to improve my technique, and even hiring a fitness coach. I acted a lot, but thought too little. It was only when I stopped and reflected on what mattered to me that I realized that I had never wanted to be a bodybuilder. I was following the wrong ideal, chasing something that didn't make me happy or produce any visible results. Upon this realization, I redesigned my entire approach to fitness and started doing something that finally felt natural instead of forced. Periodically pause and reflect on your own choices. Are you pursuing goals that matter to you? Are you working on your goals in a way that fits your lifestyle, or is there imbalance and disharmony? Day 75, on haters. Luke. Don't give in to hate. That leads to the dark side. It's a fact of life that when you do something worthwhile, you will have haters. People will criticize you for everything and anything, for a variety of reasons. People accused me of a lack of respect toward women merely because I wanted to overcome shyness and be able to talk with attractive females. Others criticized me for my efforts to lose weight and build a fit physique. Yet others laughed at my attempts to build a successful business, claiming that I would never accomplish my ambitious financial goals. Today people criticize my books or send me impolite emails because I annoyed them in some unfathomable way. In the beginning, it bothered me a lot. I wondered if there was something wrong with me, if the people criticizing me knew something that had escaped me. Time passed, and with the growing number of goals I had reached and the trust in myself I had consequently developed, I realized there was no value in the feedback that was coming from haters. Giving in to hate and letting it get to you leads to rancor, a poison that can jeopardize your long-term goals. I'd love to share with you a secret, foolproof way to deal with haters, but in the end the only solution is the most obvious one: you ignore whatever insults and malice they throw at you and focus on yourself instead. We don't know each other, but I know that if you're still reading this book, you're a person who cares about self-improvement and making the world a better place. Don't let the negative individuals instill low self-esteem or doubt in you. I'm sure you have good intentions and the ability to make your dreams come true. Shield yourself from negativity by surrounding yourself with the light. Side, other people pursuing their goals, empowering books, mentors, and visiting venues or participating in online communities that exhibit positive values. Day 76, on changing your mind. When my information changes, I alter my conclusions. What do you do, sir? I like to say that self-discipline is a powerful force, but only as long as you apply it deliberately in the right circumstances. Blindly exerting self-control when your efforts are fruitless and unlikely to lead to positive results is dangerous because it's not only a waste of time, but may also lead to bitterness. I was so self-disciplined and yet I failed. Self-discipline is overrated, I'm done with it, a person might exclaim upon realizing that their efforts were for naught, but failing to notice that their self-discipline wasn't to be blamed, it was their wrong use of it that resulted in wasting time. For example, I once worked in the search engine optimization, SEO, industry. I helped clients build backlinks to their websites so that they could rank higher on Google. In addition to client work, I built my own sites. At one point, I had 40 sites, each targeting different keywords and covering a different topic. I was extremely self-disciplined about this business, as I was building new sites every week and constantly writing new articles for them. When my revenue had finally shot up to around $1,000 a month, Google introduced an update to their algorithm and my most successful sites dropped in rankings. My income fell by over 50% overnight. I discovered that it wasn't anything new in the SEO industry. Google periodically introduced new updates and people like me regularly had to rebuild their businesses according to the new rules. Upon realizing that my business would forever stand on wobbly legs, I stopped working on new sites and retreated from the industry. Choosing to stay self-disciplined would have been the wrong choice, because it would probably never lead me to building the lucrative, stable business I was seeking to achieve. From time to time, revise your goals to factor in any new information you have recently acquired. Does it solidify your reasons to keep going, or is it a sign that perhaps you should alter your conclusions and refocus your efforts on something else? Day 77, on hurting yourself with your own judgments. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now. When people who are on a diet slip up, it's not that one-off slip-up that causes them to fail, it's their judgment about it, namely persuading themselves that since they made a mistake, all of their prior efforts are now for naught. What follows is self-guilt, which leads to self-doubt, which awakens the need to self-comfort, usually by eating forbidden foods, after all, in their minds they've already lost, and subsequently ruining their entire diet. A similar phenomenon happens with other goals, too. A person saving money who was forced to spend their entire savings on an emergency expense might consider it a reason to stop saving money. What's the point of saving if one unplanned cost can wipe out the entire fund? Their incorrect judgment of the situation subsequently destroys the positive habit they've built, instead of seeing the situation as a powerful demonstration of how important saving money is. Whenever you find yourself doubting that you can achieve your goal because you made a mistake or failed to hold out against a temptation, remind yourself that it's in your power to give this event either a negative or a positive meaning. You can consider it as a reason to give up or as a valuable lesson that will help you in your future endeavors. Week 12. Day 78, on collaboration. Life is not a solo act. It's a huge collaboration, and we all need to assemble around us the people who care about us and support us in times of strife. Even though there's self in the word self-discipline, it doesn't mean that you need to refuse the help of other people or that you need to reinvent the wheel because you can't make your decisions based on the knowledge acquired by other people. It's easier to put up a fight against temptations and stick to your resolutions when others have your back. Learning from the experience of others, regardless if it's in the form of a book or a conversation, makes things easier, too. I've greatly benefited from the power of social support by participating in online forums. I'm pretty sure that if it weren't for the people I've gotten to know over the years of my entrepreneurial journey, it would have been much harder for me to reach success. Knowing that the people who inspired me also had faced obstacles and were tempted to give up, it was easier for me to keep going when it was me who was facing the immense difficulties. It doesn't mean that you need to become great at making online friends, though. Most of the people who immensely helped me on my journey don't even know me. It was the breadcrumbs they left in the form of forum posts and articles that changed my life, not my friendship with them. Another way to collaborate is to find a person who will hold you accountable, a friend who's on the same journey as you or perhaps an online support group. The key to benefiting from this strategy is choosing the right accountability partner. Go with a person who's strict, rather than lax, so that when you don't feel like doing something, he or she will push you to keep going rather than give you a pass and a pat on the back. Ideally, this person should be great at what you want to accomplish, and if not great, at least slightly better than you. Last but most definitely not least, if there's a way to accomplish your goal more quickly through working with a reputable coach and you can afford it, do that. I learned the fundamental knowledge about self-publishing in just a couple of weeks, thanks to working with a person who was knowledgeable about the industry. It greatly shortened my learning curve, inspired me, and helped me avoid several obstacles that would have otherwise tested my resolve, if not outright discouraged from entering this business. Day 79, on books. Books are the quietest and most constant of friends, they are the most accessible and wisest of counselors, and the most patient of teachers. Continuing the topic of support, by far the most important friend on my journey of building self-discipline, developing mental resilience, and working on my long-term goals were non-fiction books that were written by people who have achieved my dreams. Books were, are, and will always be one of the most valuable things a person wishing to change themselves can learn from to make their dreams come true. Instead of idle talk about books being incredible, I think I've already made my case clear. Today I want to share with you 3 books I believe you should read for education and inspiration. Here they are. 1. The Millionaire Fastlane by M.J. DeMarco. The Millionaire Fastlane was the book that changed it all for me when it comes not only to business, but also my attitude about work and life in general. In addition to countless lessons about how to start and run a successful business, you'll learn how to become a person tuned in to the needs of others, a skill that will aid you in all kinds of endeavors. Granted, not everyone equates success with financial success, so if you don't care about achieving financial independence, you can probably skip this book. 2. The One Thing by Gary Keller. Richard Koch is the original author of books about the 80-20th principle, stating that 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort. I strongly recommend his books, but when it comes to the most accessible introduction to the topic, Gary Keller's book is the winner. The premise behind The One Thing is answering the following question: what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it everything else will be easier or unnecessary? The book delves deep into the details on why and how single focus is so powerful and important for success. I've made this rule one of the most important guiding principles in my life, and I strongly suggest implementing it in your life, too. 3. A Guide to the Good Life by William B. Irvine. Roman Stoicism adapted to the modern world by William B. Irvine is one of the most helpful life philosophies you can embrace to live a happier life. Stoics were also big on self-control, mental resilience, and preparedness, so Irvine's book is an all-encompassing guide on how to banish negative emotions, gain more happiness, and become a more valuable member of society. The most important takeaway for me is practicing your resilience by visualizing bad events. I regularly use this strategy for reducing worry and increasing my peace of mind. Day 80. On cultivating positivity when things go bad. Good humor is a tonic for mind and body. It is the best antidote for anxiety and depression. It is a business asset. It attracts and keeps friends. It lightens human burdens. It is the direct route to serenity and contentment. Treating everything seriously is a surefire recipe for frustration and depression, particularly when you repeatedly get hit with one obstacle after another with no chance to catch your breath. Negative thoughts can sprout in even the most positive minds, but it's your choice whether you nurture them or pull them out. When I was struggling to grow one of my businesses, my laptop broke down. I not only had to buy a new computer to be able to continue working, but also pay a steep fee to have my data recovered. I've since learned how important regular data backup is. To make matters worse, all of that happened while I was deep in debt. I tried to keep my spirits high, but make no mistake, it was one of the darkest, most hopeless periods of my life. Still, if it weren't for at least trying to be positive about the future, I'm sure I would have had a challenging time sticking to the business that had landed me in so much trouble. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You will face seemingly hopeless situations and your self-discipline will be tested on numerous occasions. How will you maintain good spirits despite the negative circumstances? What are your most effective techniques to make yourself feel better? I strongly suggest creating a list of simple ways you can improve your mood that you'll be able to turn to when you find yourself in a distressing situation. Day 81, on identifying your resources. With every accident, ask yourself what abilities you have for making a proper use of it. If you see an attractive person, you will find that self-restraint is the ability you have against your desire. If you are in pain, you will find fortitude. If you hear unpleasant language, you will find patience. For every problem you face, there's an ability or resource you can tap into to overcome it. The key is to discover what it is and immediately put it to use. Unfortunately, many people default to discouragement or frustration rather than adopt a resourceful attitude and look for possible solutions. Little good comes out of covering your eyes, wishing the problem will go away on its own. The best way to prepare yourself for setbacks is to visualize them and seek solutions before these problems materialize. Not all of your negative predictions will come to pass, but the ones that do won't paralyze you as much if you prepare yourself for them. For example, if you're on a diet, think of some common scenarios that might jeopardize your adherence to it. What will you do if somebody you always wanted to meet invites you to dinner at a less than healthy restaurant? What will you do if you find yourself starving at the airport while waiting for the connecting flight? What will you do when you fail to resist the temptation to eat chocolate and turn an unplanned treat into a full-blown cheat day? By creating a list of potential solutions while being at the top of your game and not being influenced by negative emotions, you'll save yourself the time and energy that is wasted on trying to solve problems with a clouded mind. Mind. Day 82, on extreme focus. Take up one idea. Make that one idea your life, think of it, dream of it, live on that idea. Let the brain, muscles, nerves, every part of your body, be full of that idea, and just leave every other idea alone. This is the way to success. While flawless, 100% focus on a single idea is close to impossible for a modern human being, there's a lot you can gain from focusing as much as you can on just one goal. In fact, I consider it so important that I wrote an entire book about it titled The Ultimate Focus Strategy. There are two primary benefits of making a single idea your life. The first one is that limiting your focus to a single thing requires a great deal of self-discipline, which subsequently makes it an excellent exercise in cultivating self-control. I've acquired a lot of self-discipline, and finally achieved my goal of building a successful business, thanks to limiting my focus to one business model. Sticking to one thing has taught me the value of patience, dedication, and made me realize how powerful small, and consistent, improvements can be over the long term. The second benefit of extreme focus is that by centering your life around the one most important endeavor, you'll be more likely to reach it than if you were to spread your attention thin. You have higher chances of implementing new nutritional habits and losing 20 pounds, or 10 kilos, in the next 6 months than trying to lose weight while also implementing a new workout routine, building a side business, fighting against your fear of public speaking, saving money for an emergency fund, and learning a foreign language. If self-discipline is a resource that you can deplete, scientists are still trying to figure it out. It makes sense to spend it judiciously, starting with your most important goal. Day 83, on changing your identity. Every time you make a decision to stick with your principles instead of indulging your weaknesses, you get stronger spiritually. And eventually this spiritual strength becomes a part of your identity. I don't think of myself as a non-smoker or X-anything, because smoking and other vices are things I would never do in a million years. The only way to instill a permanent change is to change your identity. As long as you define yourself by a behavior you want to eliminate, your efforts to cultivating self-control. I've acquired a lot of self-discipline, and finally achieved my goal of building a successful business, thanks to limiting my focus to one business model. Sticking to one thing has taught me the value of patience, dedication, and made me realize how powerful small, and consistent, improvements can be over the long term. The second benefit of extreme focus is that by centering your life around the one most important endeavor, you'll be more likely to reach it than if you were to spread your attention thin. You have higher chances of implementing new nutritional habits and losing 20 pounds, or 10 kilos, in the next 6 months than trying to lose weight while also implementing a new workout routine, building a side business, fighting against your fear of public speaking, saving money for an emergency fund, and learning a foreign language. If self-discipline is a resource that you can deplete, scientists are still trying to figure it out. It makes sense to spend it judiciously, starting with your most important goal. Day 83, on changing your identity. Every time you make a decision to stick with your principles instead of indulging your weaknesses, you get stronger spiritually. And eventually this spiritual strength becomes a part of your identity. I don't think of myself as a non-smoker or X-anything, because smoking and other vices are things I would never do in a million years. The only way to instill a permanent change is to change your identity. As long as you define yourself by a behavior you want to eliminate, your efforts to change will be in vain because subconsciously, you'll treat your changes as a temporary situation. I don't define myself as a person who doesn't take drugs. I've never done drugs and never plan on doing them. Why would I define myself as a non-drug user? In essence, that's what people do when they say they're ex-smokers or ex-convicts. That's behind you. Embrace the present and develop a different, positive definition of yourself that will explain who you are and what you do today, not what you're no longer about or what you're no longer doing. As a vegetarian, I don't think of myself as a person who used to eat meat. I'm a person who eats a plant-based diet. It doesn't matter how flavorful you tell me this piece of chicken is, I won't eat it. Your decision to be self-disciplined has to be equally firm. Don't define yourself as a person who used to be lazy or lacking discipline. Define yourself as a person who's doing his or her best to ensure the best future possible. No matter how enticing the temptations are, your self-definition will ensure that you'll stay away from them. Day 84, on work and chatter. The only relationship between work and chatter is that one kills the other. Let the others slap each other on the back while you're back in the lab or the gym or pounding the pavement. If you often talk about what you're going to do instead of doing it, you're not only wasting time you could have spent working on your goal, but also run the risk of not doing anything at all. Self-congratulatory chatter carries with it the danger that you confuse it with what actually matters, work. Merely talking about your goals doesn't turn you into a person who is working on them. This phenomenon is most visible in entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs who talk the most are usually the ones doing the least. They attend every seminar, meetup, workshop, and are heavy social media users, but when it comes to making actual progress with their business, somehow it slips between the cracks. Some of them don't even have an actual business. They're in a never-ending research phase. But don't worry, everybody thinks you're taking a lot of action based on how much you talk about business, and that's what matters, right? Sadly, while it can gain you points for popularity among the gullible, it isn't a substitute for work and achievement. To ensure that you actually do the work and get the results, be cautious. Talking about your goals with others. Use a simple rule of thumb: if you're talking merely to show off, save it. If you're talking to gather valuable feedback or get support, do it, but what's more important, actually act on the advice you receive. Week 13. Day 85, on experimenting to see what happens. It often feels like everything is so serious, that if you make one mistake, it will all end in disaster. But really everything you do is just a test, an experiment. Experiment. To see what happens. I learned how to feel good in spite of failure when I adopted the "let's see what happens" mentality. Now, whenever I want to try something new that has an uncertain chance of success, I tell myself it's an experiment. I assume that whatever I invest in it, I invest it to gather data, and not necessarily to get a return. For example, I started investing in video courses for my business. In the end, it was a spectacular failure, but I wasn't particularly worried about it because my experiment was still a success. It proved that my business idea wasn't a good one. I also learned a lot working on this goal, and that alone was worth it. I'm not sure if I would have taken action if I had told myself that this endeavor absolutely must deliver a positive return. You can apply the same mentality to every other goal. For example, if you're afraid that you'll fail to develop a habit of getting up early, consider it a A 30-day experiment to see how waking up early will make you feel and whether you'll be more productive. When you think of it this way, you ensure from the get-go that no matter how your experiment goes, it's a success. After all, you aren't trying to make a permanent change, you only want to test a hypothesis. Usually, if the experiment goes well, it leads to a permanent change anyway, and that's the purpose of adopting this different mindset. You're breaking through the initial resistance by lowering your expectations, and you consequently eliminate the fear of failure. Day 86, on the spillover effect of success. I've come to believe that success at anything has a spillover effect on other things. You can take advantage of that effect by becoming good at things that require nothing but practice. Once you become good at a few unimportant things, such as hobbies or sports, the habit of success stays with you on more important quests. The first time I discovered that success in one area results in success in other walks of life was when I started exercising. Thanks to my own efforts, I got stronger, lost weight and gained some muscle. This small success made me realize that I had control over my life. From then on, I embarked on other projects to change my life, including objectives as varied as overcoming shyness and building self-confidence, launching my first business, living in a foreign country, learning foreign languages, and eventually becoming a self-published author. If you don't believe in your abilities to succeed, heed Scott Adams' advice and pick something that requires nothing but practice to become good at it. Invest several months of your life into it, and when you notice progress, based entirely on your own efforts, not luck, I'm sure you'll discover in yourself the power to tackle other challenges. In addition to that, every goal you're consistently working on will help you develop the proper habits and traits needed to achieve success. Whether it's learning how to play chess, dancing, learning Russian, setting up a backyard garden, or mastering table tennis, the real-world experience of going from a complete newbie to a person knowledgeable about the topic will transform you from the inside out. Day 87, on attributing failure to external factors. When interpreting their own failures, individuals tend to make external attributions, pointing to factors that are outside of their direct control, such as luck. As a result, their motivation to exert effort on the same task in the future is reduced. Failure can offer valuable feedback that will help you achieve your goal. Unfortunately, many people lose the learning opportunity by attributing the failure to an external factor, such as luck. Consequently, instead of identifying the root cause in something they did, they wrongly assume that they had no control over the situation. This not only makes them less likely to exert equal effort during subsequent attempts, which in itself reduces their chances of success, but also increases the risk they'll repeat the same mistakes over and over again. As a result, they enter a downward spiral. Each failure makes them less motivated to try again, and soon they give up, frustrated at how unfair the world is. It wasn't really the world that was responsible, it was their own failure to take responsibility for their failure and learn from it. Make sure that whenever you fail, you always look for the cause of the failure in something that you did, and not in something that you couldn't control. Even when it looks as if something was indeed outside of your control, it doesn't mean that you didn't make any mistakes that might have increased the chances of such an outcome. Identifying those mistakes, even if they were only partially responsible for the failure, will help you in future attempts and prevent you from developing the unhelpful mindset that you don't have direct influence over your life. For example, if you weren't hired by your dream company, perhaps it wasn't your fault. Maybe there was a better candidate, the hiring manager didn't like you, or the company later decided against hiring a new employee. However, even in such a case, it's valuable to ponder whether there was anything you could have done better. Perhaps you could have improved your resume, asked better questions during the interview, or been better prepared for the questions you had assumed were unlikely to be asked. Maybe it still wouldn't have resulted in success, but at least that way you will have learned something new that will increase your chances of getting hired the next time, and consequently, you get to lift your spirits and boost your determination. Day 88, on the comfort zone. Zone. People will do almost anything to stay in their comfort zones. If you want to accomplish anything, get out of your comfort zone. Strive to increase order and discipline in your life. Discipline usually means doing the opposite of what you feel like doing. I used to be terrified of heights. When I was a teenager, I remember shaking with fear while I stood on top of a 130 feet, 40 meters, tower, afraid to approach the railing. Today, I hike through the high mountains and climb cliffs up to the same height as that of the tower. I jumped out of the airplane, visited the tallest building in the world as of 2017, Burj Khalifa in Dubai, and flew in a hot air balloon, things I would have never done in a million years if it weren't for my consistent attempts to face my fear of heights. Don't get me wrong, I still experience fear, but it has greatly diminished, thanks to years of stepping outside of my comfort zone. Exposing myself to heights was the opposite of what I felt like doing, but I knew it was necessary to help me grow. What started as a mere desire to get rid of a fear of heights turned into a full-blown personal transformation. Whether it's a fear of heights, an aversion to exercise, or any other kind of animosity toward the uncomfortable, scary, or out of the ordinary, stretching your comfort zone by gradually exposing yourself to such stimuli will lead to immense personal growth. I strongly recommend regularly stepping outside your comfort zone in both little and big ways. Little ways can include something as simple as pushing a little bit harder during a workout or working for a little while longer when you feel like you're about to fall asleep. Big ways include things like skydiving if you're afraid of heights, camping in the wilderness if your biggest love in life is your warm, comfortable bed, or learning public speaking when you're terrified of speaking in front of more than 2 people. As uncomfortable and difficult it is to step outside your comfort zone, it pays incredible dividends in the long run. Make it an inherent part of your life to expose yourself to discomfort and face your fears head-on. Few things will change your life more than going outside of your comfort zone. Day 89, on not making excuses. You have to deliver results when making excuses is an option. Self-discipline comes down to choosing between instant and delayed gratification. Instant gratification feels good today but compromises your long-term goals, while delayed gratification usually doesn't deliver much in the way of instant pleasure, but it can lead to bigger rewards in the future. Sometimes you'll find yourself in a situation in which you'll be able to make excuses. They may even sound so sensible that, upon hearing your rationalizations, nobody would question your backing out of that situation. However, don't let them fool you. Even if there's some legitimacy to them, in most cases it's still nothing other than choosing instant gratification. For example, if you want to establish a habit of jogging 3 times a week, and one day it rains and you're afraid you'll get sick, you have a valid excuse to skip exercise. After all, there is a higher risk of getting sick when running in bad weather, right? However, it sets a dangerous precedent. You're making a decision that your habits depend on the weather. Your self-control, or your lack of it, is now at the mercy of external factors, largely dependent on whether jogging in the given circumstances is easy or not. Is this the right way to build mental toughness and self-discipline? If you decide to keep going instead of defaulting to the easy choice of using, partly valid, excuses, you'll immensely strengthen your resolve. It takes even more discipline, and consequently offers a greater opportunity to exercise your self-control muscle, to stick to something when you have a good justification to not do it. Day 90, on quitting in a smart way. Quitting when you're panicked is dangerous and expensive. The best quitters are the ones who decide in advance when they're going to quit. You can always quit later, so wait until you're done panicking to decide. They say that quitters never win, and winners never quit. However, quitting is sometimes more beneficial than stubbornly sticking to something that's not working for you. The key is to quit in a smart way, as the result of a process of logical thinking, not on a whim in the heat of the moment. For example, after a couple of years of sticking to a bodybuilding routine, I'd grown tired of it. I was often so annoyed during the workout that I wanted to stop it and go home. However, doing so would have allowed my temporary state of mind to make the decision, and that could have negatively affected my resolve in similar situations in the future where, having once allowed myself to quit on a whim, I would consider it a sensible thing to do again. I took my time and carefully considered the implications of giving up bodybuilding before I finally parted ways with it. This way, I quit strategically instead of impulsively. If you're currently discouraged with a certain goal of yours, make a decision that you won't quit until you can make a logical, educated decision that will take into account all of the repercussions of doing so. After carefully considering your options and their logical consequences, if you still want to quit, you're probably making the right choice.